Howdy folks, my name is Ryan Farley, and welcome to Fiddle and Steel Music Review. Today's episode, I'm going to be doing an album review of the new Western Terrestrials album, Back in the Saddle of a Fever Dream. Right off the bat, I'm going to make the assumption that most people watching this video probably have never heard of Western Terrestrials before, but if that's the case, that's alright because I'd be glad to introduce them to you. If I was going to describe Western Terrestrials to somebody, I'd probably start off with the fact that they have a very honky-tonk sound. I know that's a broad label, but I use it purposely. If you're listening to music, you're probably going to hear that at times it's got a lot of folk in it, sometimes it's just good old country music, and other times it's got a lot of rock and roll in it. And that's all connected by an overall twanginess in their music, which is why I just think that makes a general honky-tonk sound. And that's pretty in-depth, so if you were looking for something more simple, you could just go right to the genre of country music. Another great thing about Western Terrestrials is that they're straight out of Vermont, which I think makes them pretty great models for the resurgence of real country music that's been going on for the past few years here. The reason that I think this is because for a very long time, pop country has focused on Southern heritage and Southern culture, which I think is great and deserves a spot in country music, but in more recent years, it has been used as a determining factor in people's musical careers and whether their music was country music at all, which I don't think is right, and Western Terrestrials proves isn't true because they're making really great country music, even though they're straight out of Vermont, like I said. Compared to some of their earlier music, I'd say that Back in the Saddle of a Fever Dream has a little bit of a different sound. If I had to put a label on it or describe it in some way, probably say it's a mix of psychedelic country and honky-tonk sounds, but I'm not 100% sure, because space country makes sense, although that sounds weird. All that I'm really trying to describe is some traditional country music that has a layer of ambience on it, kind of echoey, that really altogether makes this album such a great album. As a band, they say that they've worked very carefully to have an innovative sound, yet pay homage to their influences, such as Waylon Jennings and George Jones. You really get to hear this be expressed in songs like Fix This Broken Heart. Fix This Broken Heart is a song that describes the hardships of a heartbreak. Some of the things it brings up in this song is how objects are easier to fix than broken relationships, and how sometimes you're left with a heartache much longer than you'd like to. At times, every sign of love is gone, but you continue to have a heartbreak for no reason. And that's really what this song talks about lyrically. But musically is a whole different story. You get to hear lots of pedal steel licks on this song, which is a style I really love in country music, and it's probably why I love this music a lot. I don't know if it's everybody else's style, probably not, I'd have to guess, but that's one thing that stands out to me. Another thing that's in this song, though, is the phase guitar strumming, which is what I relate to Waylon Jennings. You get to hear his influence on them be expressed in this guitar strumming, and I think that's pretty cool just to be able to hear it, even though it's kind of in the back. Another song where you're going to hear that phase guitar strumming on is Space Cowboys Got the Blues. I stand by the highway and I watch the passing car. This song is about empty loneliness and observing the world around you. Some of these observances in this song are listening to the coyotes howling at the moon, hearing the big rigs whine, and looking at the blue of the water. Overall, I'd say this song has great imagery, and they use it to an advantage. It may make listeners think a little bit more about what they're listening to, but I think that's the best part because it makes it such a more enjoyable experience to listen to this song. And that's one of the big reasons I love it. Another big reason that I love it is because of the ambience, which I was talking about earlier, that they use in this song to give it kind of an outdoors, an outer space sound. I draw that theory kind of from the idea where they say, looking out at the sky for UFOs. And I really love that. And that probably is the reason that I immediately think of just like looking up at the stars, going outside in the middle of the night, out in the wilderness. That's kind of my first thoughts when I listen to this song. But overall, I think they did a good job on the imagery. They made a really great song and one that I enjoy. Now, in terms of a George Jones sound, I hear it a lot in a song called Ethan Alien. Barney and Betty Hill went out driving one night looking for a thrill. Ethan Alien is a song about the frontiersman Ethan Allen and a lot of other people who have called Vermont their home. And it basically calls out these figures as aliens and has linked them to a lot of conspiracies. The music is a little different though. It's not about that whatsoever. It is just a lot of pedal steel, electric guitar, and a whole lot of harmonica. The harmonica was contributed by Ketch Secor, whom some of you may know was the founding member of the band Old Crow Medicine Show. The story also goes that he gave them the song idea just by saying Ethan Allen was an alien, and let them go from there. He also offered some vocals on this song, so you'll hear him basically in the deeper parts of the song, which really makes a great song out of this. Another song that I'd say is definitely influenced by George Jones is Who's Gonna Fill These Boots, featuring Georgette Jones. Georgette is the daughter of country legends Tammy Wynette and George Jones, and on this song you're going to hear a lot of gospel sounds that I have heard on George Jones's gospel album. Overall, I think this all combines to make a very George Jones influenced song. Definitely a beautiful duet with Georgette Jones, and I'd say it's a great listen. Another influence on these guys is Roger Miller, and it's about as clear as day on the song Roger Miller Time, where it's sung about a man who loves to drown his sorrows in the music of George Jones and Roger Miller. But when it's Roger Miller time, or when he's listening to Roger Miller music, that's how his woman knows that something's wrong. This song really shows just how much these guys love Roger Miller, as they name drop his music at least like a dozen times just in this one song, which is great. But it was also produced by Dean Miller, who's the son of Roger Miller. Dean also produced 4 other songs on this album, and I've got to say, everybody did a great job because I've been singing this song for days now. The next song on this album that I really like is called Flying Saucer Rock and Roll. And it's a mix between 50s rock and roll and western swing. It's essentially a story about a rock and roll band that's comprised completely of aliens, and despite their language barrier, they still played amazing rock and roll. I don't know if I'm supposed to find this one humorous, but I definitely did. It's definitely a real funny one. Despite it being so funny, there's really some great music that was played over the top of the silly lyrics. And I would say it's probably one of the better songs in this album, and if you get a chance to listen to it, it's definitely one you want to take a listen to. The 2 sonic outliers on this album are King's Highway and I Need You, and I'd say they kind of have a classic rock sound to them. Comparatively to the other songs, there's not as much country sounds, but they do definitely have the country sounds in them. They're still great listens though, but I would definitely say they are the sonic outliers on the album. The last track on this album is called Space Coyote Dub, and as far as I can tell, it's just an alternate take for Space Cowboys Got the Blues. It's a little different for a couple of reasons, but the biggest one that I can notice that stands out the most is that it's just a more acoustic version of it. And I love acoustic stuff. This is great in its own right, but I tend to stick with Space Cowboys Got the Blues because I just love the imagery in that. Overall, I'd say this is a pretty great album. I've ended up listening to it quite a few times in the process of making this video, and it's something I'm really glad that happened for me because I listened to it before, but there's probably a lot of stuff I would have missed out on had I not listened to it so many times. So it's something that I plan on continuing to listen to. If I had to rate it, I'd probably say it's like a 7.4 or 7.5 out of 10 because it's a really great album. It could be better, but as is, really great, and I love all the songs on it. That's all there is for today's episode, folks. After watching my video and possibly listening to some of the music from Back in the Saddle of Fever Dream, I'd love to hear what you have to think about it. It's just kind of my passion, my life to hear about music, so if you leave a comment, I would love to talk to you about that and try and get back to you. But I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you back real soon. Bye now.